I looked at it and said, can I not make money when I sleep? Can I not invest? Now I've got a bit of a cash pot here. Can I not invest? Is there nothing else I can do or buy or build that will just bring in money, that I don't have to be sitting there making cold calls, that I can wake up one day and say, I'm going to bake bread? And then I saw property and I thought, it's an asset. I can leverage it. You just know. And in England, it's a good asset. Everyone talks about it. It's quite a cultural thing. And so then that led me into property development.
Today we have Tej Singh, who is the host of Tej Talks. He runs and acquires multiple businesses, a property developer and an author. In this episode, we talk about his journey from being a rebel as a kid to doing a degree which he then didn't know what to do with, struggling to find a job, being fired from a job, and then exploring different options, and then settling on things that he then really enjoyed, then he hated, and then he started again. So he's had this rediscovery journey multiple times, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. We also talk about how he's able to take that experience and his success, but also not let it lose sight of what's really important in his life, and how he tries to keep himself balanced and grounded. So let's go into the show. So Tej, obviously now you've grown a big audience and you've got to the position you have. But when you're growing up, would people be surprised you went on to do what you did?
I think people wouldn't be surprised that I have my own businesses, because I think I was quite rebellious. I didn't really want to listen to authority, whether that was my mum or the teachers or anyone. And so I think that definitely would make sense. My dad would say, yeah, you're always going to do that. It was obvious. I think not being in science, because I studied biochemistry, would surprise some people, but I do use science. I think we use it in every day. In health and nutrition, I use it a lot, just personally. However, being on social media, doing this, talking in front of cameras to you, publicly, I think people would be very surprised. Primarily because I was quite angry growing up, and I was quite insular. I wouldn't be I'm an extrovert now, at least I am publicly. And back then I was the total opposite. It would be minimal words, grunting, like what teenagers do, minimal kind of communication, not talking to a person, let alone a group. Not because I was scared of it, just because I just didn't really want to. And I think I can still be like that, kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, having a podcast and public speaking in front of hundreds of people, they would be very surprised, I think.
You said that you're angry, growing up. What was that about?
So my parents divorced in 2002, I think. So that is the only thing I can point to that would have caused anger, sort of anger, resentment towards that whole issue. And so growing up, it kind of caused issues. I would say it caused issues interpersonally. So with friends, colleagues, teachers, things like that. It didn't really affect my grades. The grades were still good. Mum pushed me to make them good. I was in a fairly good kind of school. It was in Southall, so it wasn't the best in the country or anything. So yeah, it mainly affected that. It didn't really affect my studies, and it hasn't really ever affected my academia.
What made you get into biochemistry then? Like you said, because it's not, from what you're doing today, it doesn't think, oh yeah, he did study biochemistry. Yeah. It's not an obvious thing, right?
So I studied biology, chemistry, psychology, and media at A-levels. So all the ologies, all the sciences, all the studies, right, of something. And I fell in love with a certain part of biology and a certain part of chemistry. And I realized this is actually what biochemistry is. It's those specific parts that I liked. And then I liked them so much, and I thought, I want to study this more. However, I'm also a bit reluctant to do a science, because I don't want to just be wearing a white coat, being a petri dish, doing all that stuff. And then going to university solidified I can't do that. So big up the people who do, because they changed the world, right? Responsible for so many advances. And so I went ahead to study it, but at the same time, I realized that with a degree in biochem, I could, be a banker. I could have a multitude of jobs, because it was a science and it was seen as a good degree, and it was at King's, so it was a good university. So it was kind of twofold. It was, here's a backup if I want to work not in a lab, but also I really love this and I can't see myself at this point studying anything else. I considered I don't think I considered much else. Looking back, people might say, did you consider business studies? But I'm yeah, but the people who are teaching it don't run their own businesses, they're teachers. So I'm I'm not going to learn anything from you, so I'm not interested in this. So for me, it just made sense. I just loved it. I was so passionate about it.
And then, so once you studied that degree, right, what then happened? Because obviously, as said, you don't want to be in a lab coat. what were your first steps of like the adult world?
So in between that, I studied abroad at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill for my second year, which is where Michael Jordan's from. J. Cole is kind of from there as well. And that was incredible. And just by doing that, I think it kind of, because, you had to pass or fail. And I passed. I'm not saying I was a strong pass or I was, far from failing, but I was a pass, and that's all that matters. It was a lot of fun. That kind of showed me, damn, like when I finish this degree and I have to go get a job, I'm not really going to have this kind of life unless it's, 2 weeks of the year when we go on holiday or something. And I think something kind of set off there, but I ignored that. It just faded into the background. It was like, get a job, do your thing. So I came back, finished my third year, and then I left uni and I was like, great, I need to get a job, obviously. I was living at home, as Punjabi boys do, for as long as I could. And I thought, I've got a degree, right? I'm going to get a job straight away because that's what they say. Come, get a good degree, employers will be lining up for you. That was not the reality. And I think any graduate, probably even now, knows this. Like, you come out and you're like, oh, so what, I'm applying for like 40 jobs a day. 20 of them I don't even really want. I'm getting like one interview a week. I think I had something like 30 like conversations, like pre-interviews or interviews before I landed something. And it was an internship. I was like, so why did I spend 3 years? And luckily it was $3,000 a year then, but $9,000 for this. So I got into the internship at a company in Battersea, like in medical communication, so marketing and sciences, which is what my A-levels were. So it's kind of full circle. Did that, then got an actual paid job because of that. Experience helped so much, right? As they always say, we want a degree and we want experience, and we want both, but no one has that when they start out. So did that, got into a paid job, and then just started feeling things about being paid to work and not being paid to work past 5. I don't know if you've seen this in your previous jobs or your previous guests, but like, I think it's quite normal in most industries, right? You get paid from 9 to 5, whatever it is. But if you're there at 8:30, maybe if you leave at 5:30 or 6, you don't technically get paid for it, right? And a lot of jobs don't have bonuses, so we could ignore that. And this kept happening, and they would all be in the office there till 6. And I was like, you lot are weirdos, man. Why are you here till 6 when, like, we stopped getting paid? And I said to the boss, the managing director, I said, his name was Terry. I said, Terry, so we've been working past 5. Like, where do we log that to get paid? And he goes, Tej, she goes, no, you don't get paid for that, Tej. So I said, okay, why am I here? I really don't like you or this enough to do that. And that then set off something in my head that I can't do this.
I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of people, you do the extra work because you're building towards something, right?
Yes.
But if you're building towards something which you care about, it's worth it. But if you're just working hard to get a promotion of a job that you don't really want, then does it make sense or not? And I think sometimes people really need to think about that. Are they just working really hard to get the next level, but they don't even want to be there anyway? So it's kind of like zooming out a bit of like, am I working hard towards the right goal? Or could I be using that time in another area? And then, so what happened after that?
So, that's a really good point. I didn't think of it like that. Because in my head, I was so, without realizing, I was so uninterested. Because if I was interested, of course, I would do what you said, which is, it's for a promotion, it's for a pay rise, it's to show them I'm capable. But that thought never occurred to me until now, till like 7 years afterwards. So thank you for that, because it makes sense now, why kind of people would do that. So I kept thinking this, and I thought, if I'm I think I was on 20,000, right? Like back then that was the normal London salary for graduates, right? I lived at home, so it was just 20,000 a profit if you think about it, right, after tax. So I was like, great. But then I thought, but if I'm not getting paid to do it after hours, and, I like it, but I'd rather just be playing Xbox or something, or traveling or whatever. Let me get a job that pays me more. I then went back to that internship and said, hey, I've got experience. I see you're hiring and you pay way more. What's your vibe? And they said, yeah, cool. And then I think my salary went up to 26,000, which it's a big percentage jump. So I said bye to the company I worked for in Richmond. And I just said to them, look, I'm resigning, blah, 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 here's why, whatever, see you later. And they were like, oh, you should have given us a chance. And I don't know, I just thought, whatever. And maybe I should have, right? Because maybe they could have paid me more. But, and that's a tip for people listening, is actually, before you jump ship and run somewhere else, think of what you're in and how that could improve, because they may turn around and say, you know what, we undervalued you, sorry, here's money. They probably won't, but they might. So I left to go there, and then blah, 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 was there for 3 or 4 months. They were paying me 26,000 to do shredding. Am I the most overpaid shredder in the world? I just thought, why
There might be some people listening now who want that job. So
Listen, they can have it because you can put your podcast in and just shred all day. I just thought, why are you not paying me this much money to do this when I can also actually do the job? Anyways, cultures got toxic. I got fired, which for me was a pivotal point because I think when anyone gets fired at any stage of life, you're a bit like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Got bills, got this, got that. But they kind of call me down in the room. You know, I walked in, I saw the HR lady's shoes because she had these like strong boots on. I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Why would we be in a meeting one-on-one with a witness? We got in and she said, you're not performing the same you were on interview. I said, I'm definitely not because I've lost all interest. And then she fired me and I felt relieved. Why would I spent 3 years, all this money and I felt relieved. So I went home, told my mum, which I think the silence from a Punjabi mum is worse than words sometimes. And I was like, cool. And my dad is just a bit of a hippie. He was like, cool, what's next? And I was like, cool, I got you. We'll sort something out. And then, yeah, that ended my career in being employed. I haven't been employed since. And I pray to all the gods that I never have to be employed again until I die.
So then what did you do there? Because one of the interesting things as well, right? She said you had this degree, you then struggled to get a job, you then didn't enjoy your first job, you left it, got fired from your next job. Where was your kind of self-confidence at this point as well?
I think maybe it was arrogance or naivety or confidence or all of the above, because I kind of thought, well, there's a million jobs in the world. This is just not for me. And then I thought, you got a degree that you can use in other fields. And this is why you did it, because younger me knew how fickle older me is and was and still is. And it was preparing for something like this. But I think also I thought, I wasn't, some people when they're like 17, they're at the school gates selling sweets, being entrepreneurs, they had 100K start. That was not me. Like I rate those guys, like incredible. I was just like, you know what, how old was I? 23. And I said, I live at home. I'm going to live at home for as much as I can. Let me just do some silly shit now that could generate some money. And so I had a friend who had a recruitment business who was probably 4 or 5 years older than me. So he'd been through jobs, whatever. And he said, oh, it's really easy. I'll show you the way. I'll give you mentorship. I'll set you up, everything. I still haven't got that. To this day, I'm waiting for this mentorship. So I said, all right, let's have a recruitment business. And then after reading about it and understanding it, it was a case of, and it's not simple, it's not easy. Oh, sorry, it is simple, but it's not easy. It's very difficult, emotionally very difficult. I got the process. You need candidates, you need clients, you need to match them, you need to communicate, you need to... Okay, cool, whatever, let's test my skills. I hate cold calling, I think. Let's just try it. So I set up a recruitment business. Age 23, from my dad DG, my grandma's house in Southall, in the conservatory with no heating on, single skim walls, like typical Desi conservatory, with a computer, with a LinkedIn premium thing, 40 quid a month. And I had my first placement, I think it was at the end of a month, and that was $3,000. And there's a rebate period, so it wasn't 100% mine, but it was $3,000. And I thought, so I was getting paid, what was it, 26K a year, whatever that is a month. That's not $3,000 a month. And I did this in a month. And I actually, I'm new to this. I'm not good at cold calling. What's going to happen in a few weeks, in a few months when I get better? And then I essentially continued the recruitment business for 3.5 years. And then I did some in-house roles at like Babylon Health, which was a GP. I think it's gone bankrupt now, but
just recently,
So I built a marketing team for them. So oops. And I worked with them in a children's book company called Wonderbly, which used to be based near here actually. Just contracted for loads of money, having fun. I got sick of it. It was golden handcuffs. It was making money, but I hated it. So again, there's this theme of I'm making money, but I hate it. And then I change, which I think at the end of the podcast, people will detect a common theme here.
That's also a good thing, right? Is that a lot of people hate their lives or they're not happy. But then sometimes, I think what happens is sometimes, and I think it happened to me and other people in the past, is that you're unhappy, but you know the situation, right? Whereas some people would rather be unhappy and certain than risk being worse off and taking a risk. But it's like, if you're already at a base level of unhappiness, how much have you got to lose potentially? And everybody's financial situation is different. There's all these different things to take into account, but you can often test things on the side without taking the full risk. See if you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, then invest more time in it. So you had the recruitment business and you're working for these other people as well.
So towards the end of it, yeah. So I had my own, I was doing a few bits on the side, and I was in-house, so doing like all of their recruitment and hiring for a certain part of the business.
And whereabouts are we now in terms of what year are we at?
So this would have been 4 years afterwards. I was 20. So I would have been about 27. Yeah. No, 26, 27, I think. I don't remember what year that was. I'm sure you can work it out. And yeah, I was just getting sick of it. Even the in-house stuff, I looked at it, and I think at one point I was getting paid like 450 quid a day, which, given my experience at the time, was a lot. I was good, and I brought a vibe to the office, which you can't put a price on, really. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. But it was definitely overpaid. They tried to bring me on permanent. I said, you want to put me on like 30 grand a year? I was like, no, see you later. I'm not here for this life. And I looked at that and said, you know what? That's a good amount of money, but surely I can make 1,000, a day, whatever it is. And then I thought, and I kept thinking, right, I'm putting in 6 hours, I'm getting paid 450. I'm doing 20 hours in 1 month and I'm getting a placement, and that's 3 grand. And money's not everything. And I'm sure we'll get to that. But I looked at it and said, can I not make money when I sleep? Can I not invest? Now I've got a bit of a cash pot here. Can I not invest? Is there nothing else I can do or buy or build that will just bring in money, that I don't have to be sitting there making cold calls, that I can wake up one day and say, I'm going to bake bread, like I did on Monday. Like, I'm going to get up one day and, I don't know, just going to do whatever for an hour. Like, is there nothing that I can do to do that? And then I started listening to some podcasts, which there weren't many around. I don't think they were very good. Very salesy in property, in, self-development, reading books, things like that. And then I saw property and I thought, it's an asset. I can leverage it. Okay, I think, and this is, you look around, I have actually got family who own property, but you just know and hear like, oh, uncle's got property, this, that, and the other. You just know. And in England, it's a good asset. Everyone talks about it. It's quite a cultural thing. And so then that led me into property development.
You said you listened to podcasts as one of your educational sources for starting in that property world. With your own podcast, did you start that quite quickly along that journey, or what made you start your own podcast to share your own knowledge on it?
It was the other podcast. They made me start it because a lot of the time the people asking questions were very experienced, which is great because then they can help you. But at the same time, it was a sales pitch. They were very short podcasts, very much like, hey, so how do you know when the plaster is done correct in a house? And they would say, well, you go up to it and you check this and check that. But anyways, the rest of it's on my, so I only know, okay. And also, because the people were experienced, I felt that whether it was their experience, whether it was their choice, they weren't asking the questions that I wanted to know the answer to. I was like, yeah, but I don't even know what a skirting board is at this point. I don't know, flipping heck, I need to know the basics. And so I thought, hold on a minute. I want to know these answers, and I also want to learn, and I also don't want to necessarily pay to learn, which maybe was a mistake. I don't want to pay to learn. I'll do a podcast. And I looked around and I thought, actually, people in property have really bad personal brands and still do to this day. A lot of people have good ones, but there's a lot of bad. So I thought, wait a minute, if I work on my brand and my podcast, I can give them a spotlight. I can have one-on-ones with people and learn. I can then have relationships with them and learn. And they can kind of act as my mentors, friends, my networking. I don't have to leave the house because back then it was on Zoom. And so it just made sense for me to help other people, spotlight them, spotlight myself, to create a podcast. Podcasts are hard, as you know, because at least when I started, it was mainly audio. And the audio apps are like a one-way channel. You can't comment, you can't like, you can't, it's just you put it out and it's like, how do people find me? Through SEO? It's actually not as advanced as maybe it should be. So you have to use other forms, Instagram, YouTube, etc., to push people towards it. But because I think I started out quite early before podcasts were big and before property podcasts were big, it allowed me to maybe have a bit of a head start and a jump on it. And people always said from day one, we love almost how innocent your questions are and almost how genuine they are, because you sound like you don't know them. And that's us. And we feel like we connect with you. Yeah. And obviously over time that changes. So that's why I started it.
Because it's interesting, one of the things I do, which surprises a lot of people, is that I don't do a lot of research before the podcast. Because then the questions I'm asking you are the questions I actually want to know. If I've been researching you for 2 days or 3 days, then I'm asking questions from an educated perspective rather than, okay, I know the basics of who you are, but then what do I want to know more about? And hopefully the audience wants to learn that too, right? Going into that, like starting a podcast, right? For a lot of people, that's really scary, right? Were you at all put off by that? I guess, did the cold calling experience, for example, would that have helped you because you got a bit more used to just putting yourself out there and maybe failing?
Massively. That helped me in life because like rejection is like, okay, cool, next, just one no close to it. Yes. So it helped massively. I think it also helped me just be sort of enunciate my words as much as I can and speak clearly and then over time learning public speaking also helped with that. So I think for me, when I start things, maybe it's blind confidence, maybe it's just, well, if you can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. So let's do it. It's kind of, I think sometimes it can be as simple as that. And so it wasn't scary. And I think what at that time made it less scary for a lot of people was there was not really video. It was mainly just audio. So it was never like, oh, I have to public speak, I have to speak in front of a camera, which a lot of people are not comfortable with. So it was just me in a room with a microphone like this, with nothing, like, just literally there in the conservatory, talking into it and putting it out there. So I think I understood from my recruitment days that, well, the first few months are going to be crap. No one's going to listen. My mum's not even going to listen.
That's such a huge point, right? Because so many people, I want to become a full-time podcaster. And the amount of, you probably get the same thing, right? And it's just, that's not how it works. Like, it's going to suck for a while, but the only way to learn is to suck for a while.
Yeah.
You keep doing it. Like, nobody watches my first ever episodes, right? I'm 240 something episodes in. You're like way further along than that, I think, right? But you've got to be willing to suck in order to get good at something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what for example, we both danced, right? We were both crap at the beginning.
Big
right?
time.
But you don't get better unless you're willing to have that bit at the beginning.
It's true. No, people don't want, it's like everything in our body, right? Enzymes have an activation energy and there's like this graph and it's kind of like they need, I can't remember what the exact temperature is, but at 38 degrees, body temperature, they're not really doing much. They're kind of chilling here because there's not enough energy to get them to work. And it needs to just pass, I think it's 40, just to get past that activation energy. And once they're over that hill, it carries on, it does work. But getting to that point in business, that activation energy takes years, weeks, months. It takes 2,000 cold calls. It takes, reading 400 legal packs before auction. It takes doing 250 podcasts, looking back and thinking, shit, I hope no one watches that first one. But now you're like, yeah, we're good. Like, and people commenting, wow, what a transformation. So people, and it's very hard, right? Because when in an employed job, have you had to do that much hustle and not get, it doesn't happen. And to feed yourself, to do that, like there's so many aspects to that hustle, that activation energy to get to the point of it being rewarding that especially if you don't have people in your network who've done it, how do you know it's ever going to come when you're sitting there in your house, in your flat, you're at your kitchen, table, growing your business and you're like, but I've done 40 calls and no one said yes. Like, how are you supposed to know what to do, right?
And one of the things you mentioned earlier as well is about building that personal brand and how important that was in order to get you ahead into the podcast. And it also helps you learn, right? Because you had a brand where people wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things people sometimes don't get as well. Is like, if you message me from a private account where I can't see anything about you, you don't have your name on there and you're asking me for a load of advice. And it's like, well, I don't know if you've done any work. So, and on that personal brand side, because we've mentioned it there about a lot of people in real estate have terrible personal brands. Because one of the things we generally do, and some people listening is going to be offended by it, we don't get real estate people on because generally the personal brands can often be quite slimy. And it's like, I don't know if you're legit or not. And I'm not going to do the due diligence to work that out.
Yeah.
So if I can't easily verify you, then I'm going to not take the risk of putting you in front of my audience.
Of course.
And maybe spreading misinformation. And that's one interesting thing to use, that you started, well, we've done recruitment, then you've done other things, then you went into property. But then now you're shifting away from that. Well, you're still doing it, but you're also looking into buying businesses and things as well. Mm-hmm. And what triggered that transition? Is it a natural thing of just curiosity, or what was that motivation?
Yeah, so just on your point about personal branding, I think, that's such a good point. People don't know that they're not on your show or on anyone's show, or they're not winning business because someone has looked at them, never messaged them. They've just seen the shop front, they've seen the brand and said no. Like with restaurants and Airbnbs and like reviews, the amount of, you just don't know how many people have gone to your thing and said no. You're thinking, that's my bottom line. And you'll never you can look at impressions per click or whatever, but you never really know. And that personal brand, a lot of people forget, like, oh, but I don't necessarily get that many DMs or I don't get that many likes. It's like, yeah, people are watching. People are still paying attention. And it's those touch points, right? It's those 7 touch points before a sale. I think Google or someone came up with that. If you don't do that, you're not going to have the sale. And yeah, I could call you, could text you, could go out for dinner. We could do 7 steps and we'd both be tired and broke at the end of it. Or I build a brand and I give you 7 steps. I give you 7 steps, you 7 steps. And I'm like, well, one of you is going to take it in the exact same time. Like this podcast will reach thousands, hundreds, but we're doing it once in one time frame, in one place. Like it's so valuable.
One of the huge things people forget about podcasts, for example, as well, it's like for a lot of people who don't come on many podcasts, you Google their name, this will come up on the first page of Google, right? So if somebody's trying to check out if you're like, oh, this person's messaged me, are they legit or not? If they know who the Bay HQ are, then they're now like, oh, okay, this person, like, oh, they must be like pretty good because they've come on that, right?
Exactly.
It's all these different things. They might even watch the episode.
Yeah.
But they've just seen that, oh, it's another reference point of a data point,
you're
right?
giving, right?
Yeah.
100%. Everyone knows the Bay HQ, man.
Exactly. But off the back of that, so the businesses you then got into, what are they? Like, what did you diversify into?
So I then diversified from property into like education, and I wrote 2 books on Amazon. So that was kind of, you could call them businesses, but I really wanted to write a book. I love writing. I know you write a lot as well, and you're very good at it. You and Barack, up there, I saw that.
Exactly,
I saw that.
I'm gonna use that stat until I die.
You got it, man. And like that was more passion over the thing. And Amazon takes 90% of your money anyway, so they give me 50p a month, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Amazon. Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad it paid for the yacht and everything. I was doing property, and I thought, great, it's an asset. I invest in stocks and shares as well. Like, great, these are all assets. And I love property. When we walked in here, I was like, wow, the design. I love design. I love construction and engineering, but I just got bored. I have expiry dates. Everything I do lasts like 2 to 3 years, and I'm like, there, this is done. And for me, property is something I will still buy, until I die, because it is a great asset. We can't deny that. But I thought, right, I've got property, I've got investments, I've got the education, got cash flow, got capital appreciation. I've got kind of a few different ticks of like wealth. Then I thought, I have so much interest. Like, you have so many interests, like in launching a restaurant. I love cooking. I love traveling. I've got interest in there. I have interest in cars. So I want to, hopefully try and buy a garage. I've got interest in physiotherapy. So many interests. And I thought, what is the best way to start these businesses or to have these businesses? But now I'm in a position where, so when I started out, when anyone starts out, you have so much time. Well, potentially, most people, and not a lot of money. I'm the other way around, where I have enough money now and enough investors, and I do have enough time, but I'd rather just not. Like when you're like, I'd rather just not. And my time is more valuable. Let's say that now. Yeah. And because of that, I'm like, well, okay, I'd rather pay for it. Like, we'll just pay for it. Because, I could have those 10,000 hours. I could do the startup and do step 1, step 2, get to step 7 and be like, oh, amazing. Oh, after 2 years. Or I pay you 50 grand for your business. You've done all the steps. You're happy with that money. I'm happy to pay you a chunk of money. I didn't have to. I could have taken 5 grand, done the same thing in 2 years. I don't want that. I'm paying for your 10,000 hours. I'm paying for your steps 1 to 7, your hell that you've gone through. Then I'll carry it on. Obviously, there's risks with it. Obviously, there's lots of work that goes into it. I have so many conversations that go nowhere. And it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes money. It's different to property. It can't be leveraged as easy. And I thought, okay, it's a business thing. How do I do this? And one of my friends called D. Ludlow, he buys businesses, and he's bought them in the US. He's bought some big things. And so I said, yo, teach me innit? And so he taught me, and then since then, it's probably about a year and a half, I've been doing it. And it's still, I bought my first business, and we're still looking for more. But at the same time, I'm not someone who's like, oh, I need to build an empire, I need 100 of this. I'm kind of like, okay, if I want to take the cleaning business from, it's currently 250k turnover, I want to take it to 500, I will. But like, I was on holiday for like a month recently. I didn't do anything. I came back and was like, okay, time to kick ass, but I'm not bothered by that. So will I buy another 2 businesses? Yeah, probably. But then it'll be 3 years, and then I'll be like, I'm bored. What's next? So that's what I've diversified into. And at the moment it's property, very small, the M&A, buying businesses. I'm running my cleaning business, so that's a small portion of it as well. Social media, branding, podcasting, and just trying to enjoy life as well.
And that's one of the interesting things, because I think a lot of people might get to a certain level where they could enjoy life,
Yes.
but they don't.
Nope.
And they keep cycling up, right? And I think it's really important for people to realize that, because what I often see is that people right at the very, very top, right? So on the other podcasts have done like Netflix founder, Twitter founder, those kind of guys. They were like, I wish I didn't work so hard, because like, what am I going to do? Like, you can only, like, if you don't really care about a yacht, what are you going to do with $1 billion, right? It's like
Nothing.
It's if you really, like you said, if you're really interested in what you're doing, then earning the money is almost like a side thing, right? It's like, say, for example, Warren Buffett, right? Is that he doesn't need the money anymore, but he actually really likes picking stocks.
Yeah.
That's his hobby, and he's getting paid loads of money to do that. And that's the thing that I think sometimes people forget is like, if you just keep inflating your lifestyle, you're going to have to keep working really hard. If you know what you enjoy, you can like escape some of that trap. And like, what are some of the mistakes you think you made in the M&A side? Like when you said you've had lots of conversations that have gone nowhere. What do you now do differently than say you did a year ago?
Yeah, good point. And just to go back on your point there about that trap of entrepreneurship. I love that you brought that up, because I know people who are like me, and I know many people who are like that, who are very much like, okay, we've hit this level, now here. We've got this Lamborghini here. And I like that because I like their cars and I like them. But, I love seeing it. I love seeing their aspirations and their growth, because actually sometimes I look at it and say, oh, come on, Ted, get a move on. You know what I mean? It gives me a bit of a kick up the arse. But I think in the long run, that kind of hedonistic chasing of pleasures and of materialistic things is great, and it fuels you, just like anger can fuel you. But it ain't going to fuel you till you're 80. It'll fuel you for a couple of years, and your cortisol is going to fry you and you're done. And then you need something deeper. Same with money. And it takes a while for people to realize. But like you said, with that lifestyle inflation, I think there comes a certain point where you look at, some people look at things and say, okay, I want to fly business everywhere. How much is that? Okay, I want to travel half the year. How much is that? I want to have this. And then you look at that and you say, that's a lot less than I thought. And I can get it from a lot easier ways than I thought. And I did that. I created property so I'd have passive income to just support me to do what I want. The cleaning business, I don't need the income. The restaurant I'm hopefully going to buy soon, I don't need the income. Like, I'm doing it because I love it. Hey, the income's great. I can, buy a Ferrari with it. Great. Which I will, because I love cars and I can do whatever with it. But like, I know when to stop, and I have stopped. I'm like Eminem. I've had like 4 retirements, mini retirements, because I'm like, that money's cool. Like, but now I'm going to actually do something or like enjoy myself and stop this, I appreciate it is very hard to stop, but I don't know. I think it's reading a lot of Stoicism. I'm only reading Stoicism, but I'm kind of just like, well, if the lifestyle costs, I don't know, $4,000 a month and you're making 7, like, are we not chilling? Okay, yeah, we should make 14 just to be extra safe, but we're chilling. Like, let's spend time with family. Let's travel. Let's just do things. Let's be human. Let's be present. Let's not be chasing something endlessly. So yeah, that's a really good point you made. And then on your question of M&A, what do I do differently? I've become more myself. So at the beginning, I'd have calls with everyone. And it'd be such tell me about your business. Tell me about the staff. Oh my God, it's amazing. And now I'm like, how much do you want for it? What's the net profit? Okay, here's the rough valuation. Are we aligned? We are? Okay, cool. Tell me about the business. Tell me about this. And if they go on like, so we started in 1964 and I'm like, sorry to interrupt you. I don't give a shit in brackets. But what I'm saying is, look, I don't want to waste your time. Don't waste my time. Let's just get to the point. The money is the most important thing. I spoke to someone yesterday. I said, within 2 minutes, he said, I want a 9 times valuation. I said, bro, we're a 3. Like, I don't know what you think you're getting 9 for that industry. But anyways, you got my details. Stay in touch. Bye.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And some of them may come back. Most of them won't. Fine. That's one of the things I've learned is just, look, they want to know how much you're going to pay for it as much as you want to know how much you could pay for it. Yes, some want to talk about the business, but just get to the point, because that's the main thing that matters, is that valuation at the level I'm buying at. I'm not a VC, so I'm not buying at levels where it's different. I think sending way more outreach. I started off sending like hundreds of emails. Now I think I have 9,000 on the database, and every day I get leads. And at the end of the day today, probably 3 or 4 more leads. 3 will say no, 1 might say I'm interested. But it's just upping those level leads and being more selective with it. I only want to buy in certain areas and certain industries. Before, I was way too selective. So for me, getting straight to the point and being more selective, which maybe are life lessons in general, has helped massively from what I started in M&A.
So we're going to have to go to the quick 5 questions because of time now.
Let's do it.
So first one, who are 3 British Asians that you'd love to spotlight? and that the audience should be paying attention to?
This is a good question. Guz Khan from Man Like Mubin, so funny, so funny. And he does a lot of stuff for Injustice at the moment, I think, which is really good. British Asians, I'm trying to think. This actually highlights how many I'm not aware of or I'm not following. I would say, so I want to shout out my friend Where's Shaz Ahmed. I think he might message you a couple of times. He is a mortgage broker, and he's
your biggest fan. He kept messaging you, like, you need to get Tej on the podcast.
Listen, what can I say? I'll send him the check afterwards. He's the best mortgage broker and like such a good friend to me. So I want to shout him out. He is doing bits not just in his area of mortgage broking, but actually as a networker and as business person. So definitely give a shout out to him. I'm going to shout out Raf Sapera because his music is banging, and the lyrical skill and the skill in his voice to sing like Qawwali music, to sing like sad songs, to then do Bhangra, to then like when I hear his stuff, I just don't believe it's one man. I feel like he's got a band of 5 people doing it, but like his vocal range is incredible, and I appreciate him coming into the scene new, and like I just want the next album, please, Raf.
So next one is, if people want to follow you, find out more, where should they go to?
At tej.talks on Instagram, and just type in Tej Talks into everything and it will all come up.
And is there anything you need help with right now that maybe the audience could help you with?
Ooh, if anyone is selling their business or is a good business broker or knows someone selling a business, pay referral fees, etc., get in touch. I'm happy to have a discussion, happy to assist you if you've never sold your business before or bought a business before. Happy to just have a informal chat about it, really.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission. And you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.